she's my Instagram catch, right? You see that baby, then you're like, hey. But I'm really excited to have this conversation because, you know, as we're trying to stay light and stay happy with our families and sheltering at home and staying at home, there's some pretty crazy stuff happening with our democracy, with our ability to vote. And I think we're just going to dig right in because your expertise is, I couldn't think of someone better to join me in these kickoff conversations. We're trying to bring people, you know, what is actually happening in real time with experts who know, who have their ears to the ground and also have a really smart analysis, and that's you. So I think right now I want to start with what's Wisconsin, with what happened on Tuesday, where there were sort of major conflicting messages from our government where it was stay at home and stay safe, but no, get out and vote in what is a general election in Wisconsin for state Supreme Court seat and other county officials. So I'd love to get your take on, you know, why that happened and how we can remedy that as just regular folks in our homes right now, what we can do.
So thank you for the question. Before I answer it, I do want to acknowledge the people that are out there. Hi, Paku. I want to acknowledge the people that are joining us today, and I want to wish you wellness. That centered in the politics, what's really most important, people, that you are okay. And so I just want to say I'm so happy, those of you that are joining us. I am grateful you're joining us. You are alive today. I'm praying that you're well, and well wishes on your family. I think it's really important for us to be centered and constantly remind ourselves that we're in this awkward moment. This isn't a normal moment. And so, and we don't need to continue to operate like it's normal. I think part of what has gotten us in this mess in the first place is that we're acting like things are normal. We're trained and conditioned to act like things are normal when they're not. So things are not normal, y'all. Like, you ain't crazy, it's not normal, right? And so I say that because I think that our conversation, our political conversation, can't be normal. And that we've got to really talk about what are we really talking about? Like, really, what really is at stake? And so the Wisconsin election does a couple of things for me that I want to kind of lift up. The first thing is, which goes back to my belief around this ain't normal, is that oftentimes, like, having an environment that's rooted in fear creates all kinds of opportunities for people to exploit those that are fearful, to exploit those, take advantage of the moment. And I think what we're seeing right now, we're seeing people in power take advantage and exploit this moment. They're exploiting the fact that half the country does not vote. Like, the bottom line is, we're talking about these elections, but how can you have a democracy when half the people don't vote, right? We're also in a context of a society that says, no matter what, it's the systems that matter, not the people, right? Because of what consciousness that we're in, where we're in the largest global pandemic, right, in our entire lifetime. We've never seen anything like this, right? But we're asking people to go to the polls and vote. And then we can't let that conversation be in around, well, this about the Democrats and Republicans. No, this is really about human life.
Thank you. Right. If someone's asking for your vote right now in a time when they don't give a about your safety, they don't deserve it.
They do not deserve your vote.
There's no wonder that people are like, to all of it, right?
Absolutely. It makes sense, because that's not what we're like right now. We're literally struggling around survival. And so I say that now, to me, that doesn't mean necessarily that democracy doesn't matter, because in fact, I believe that this is the moment that we need democracy more than ever. But what that means is people have to take back control. Like, this is a matter of, we've got to take control. This government's completely out of whack, right? And systems, that we can blame it on Trump, because we love boogeyman. So we can say it's Trump, but no, we've got structural problems that go far beyond Trump. And so if I would just say the kind of 3 lessons, for me, the question is, what do we learn from Wisconsin and how to move forward? So the first thing that we've got to learn is, we cannot be passive and leave this up to elected officials or even the courts to fix. It does not say we the Supreme Court. It does not say we the political parties. The Constitution says we the people. We have to take our power back. In some ways, we've abdicated as if these folks in these positions of power in government can do what they want to do. They can legislate whatever they want to legislate around us. No, No, we can't approach it that way. So what does that mean? One, that means that we've got to literally be active in a way that we've not been active before. This is not normal. And so our actions can't be normal, right? And so there has to be a process. Even in Wisconsin, what I saw is, people were trying to acquiesce to go and vote because they knew it was important. I would be organizing a recall right now.
Yeah.
Right now, I would be organizing a recall. The fact of the matter is, you are never going to I would never allow people to put the safety of human beings and my family and my mother and my father and myself in jeopardy because you are so greedy around power. No, it ain't over, y'all. We can hold them accountable. The challenge is holding them accountable. So I think that that's one thing. I think the second thing is this should be really instructive to us around November. That part of what happened in Wisconsin.
There's some questions in the chat. People want to know they can't have this happen, right?
We can't have this happen. I think part of what we've got to do is we've got to take control over it. In many ways, we've been conditioned to respond to what leadership puts forward. So they have an idea and then we respond whether we like the idea or not. I'll just say anybody out there that has gotten a job before, right? Where did you go in and you told the boss what you were going to do before you got hired? It's all backwards. They work for us, but we don't treat them as if they work for us. And so I think the second part of this is really around political activism in a way that we've got to be committed to really recognizing that we need political activism right now. One, everybody that's listening to this, you need a political home. I don't care what it is. I don't care what organization. You've got to have a political home right now. This is not the season to say, oh, this is about the candidates. No, there's a difference between, yes, we can argue around the difference between Democrats and Republicans, but it's a whole different argument around democracy and fascism. And so we've got to call it what it is and stop acting like this is normal because it's not. And so in the second part of that, and what we can learn from this process is that, I just read an article that Senator Warren just actually put forth a plan the other day around federalizing the election, that literally to have federal ballots, right? And we're able to do a mail-in ballot. Now, listen, we're in America. This is a country that right now has satellites in the air that can actually tell you what kind of fish, the swimming pattern of salmon in Alaska. We can't figure out how to mail in ballots.
Right. So I was on the phone with some folks from Amazon yesterday who, they want to help, right? And these are women inside the company. Not every person in a company is, everybody is their own individual. I looked right at them and I said, mail in ballots. If I can hop online and boop, 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 3 days later I got some exotic goods, then tell me how our private sector can do this and our public sector cannot, right?
Absolutely.
So on Saturday, I think a lot of folks who are joining us, and I'm excited to see folks who are coming in from all over. Sarah Guillermo, welcome, with Amber Reynolds from Mail and Vote. So she's going to join us. This is a fantastic primer for that. We're going to dig into that. But it's possible. I think the thing that you're hitting on is that we have been conditioned to sort of think that the structure that we've got right now is the only way to do it, and we can make these sort of minuscule changes. But this, the reverse thinking that they work for us is the right way to go, that these things are possible, that we have the ability to do these things already. Washington State voted during a pandemic, had 15% higher voter turnout than any of the other states that voted in March. I mean, this is the kind of, people need real easy talking points because I think a lot of us, have maybe a lower civic literacy than we'd like to have and don't feel like we have the expertise to talk about some of this. So I know Black Voters Matter is good. Getting your voice out here, I know people are just like me, have their pens out right now, taking some of this down, and if you don't, go get a pen. Because we have that kind of control and that mindset of thinking, I love the idea of go get yourself a political home. Vote and Lead would love to be that home. Black Voters Matter would love to be that home for you. But that's great, because I don't think, and we see it, nobody is really signing up overwhelmingly to be, wearing an R or wearing a D on the back of their names. This is about a larger systemic change about the kind of system we operate in.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know how to reiterate it enough. I'm not saying, when I'm saying join a political home, I'm not just saying that like, oh, just go do something, because I'm quite sure we all got enough work to do, like in this moment, right? But why it's important is because precisely what you said, Erin, that part of what is happening is even our political ideology is being so driven by the press, by sound bites, that we're really engaging. You know, I'll talk to people. A couple of weeks ago, I was talking to this guy who said that he had these awful things to say about Bernie Sanders, and he talked about his health, but he also went into kind of healthcare, that he didn't believe that everybody should have healthcare. And it's funny, as we were talking, we were walking out the hallway, walking down the hallway together, and I said, you know what? I guess it would be awful that people can actually have healthcare, that people would be well. That would be an awful thing, wouldn't it? And he looked at me and he said, no, I want everybody I don't want anybody to be sick. I said, really? But you don't want them to have health care? And I literally looked at his face. He had never connected the two. My point is, oftentimes we're literally regurgitating what we hear on the news or what we hear candidates say, and not really being thoughtful. We've been trained in some ways in the US to not be thoughtful around what our beliefs are. The majority of folks, I would argue, don't really know what democracy is. You know, I've had these conversations with folks around democracy, and I'll say, well, do you think the people that oppose you, should they have the right to vote? They're like, I don't know, right? And so, I was like, well, that ain't democracy. My point is, my quick points are: one, it is important to have a political home and a cadre of people that you are literally engaging in conversations beyond the sound bites. It's just really important, right? I think it is, and I think it's even more important now because there's so much content and so much misinformation out there that I will like hear people quote something that they found on social media, no research of whether it was legitimate or not, right? And then literally start spreading it. And so that's why I think we can't afford to not be thoughtful and not to be engaged. And I think part of what will happen, folks do need to join. I'm going to do the commercial for you. Vote, Run, Lead. People really need to join and be a part of a political home.
The second thing you're saying that I'm hearing is sort of trust your instincts, right? Rather than trust some of this stuff that's coming at you, because you know this, when you go around the country, and Black Voters Matter was doing that amazing bus tour around the country before the virus hit. It's, you know, and as one of the things Vote, Run, Lead does really well is we go into every corner of America to train women to run. And so many women who come through are like, well, you know, I think that this is kind of not right. And I'm like, oh, hell no, that's not right. You know? You know, we're getting really gaslit. You know, we're having a president who uses mail-in voting, who's saying mail-in voting is no good for everybody else. Like, that kind of stuff can really start to eat at the psyche. And so I think the thing that I hear you saying is like, trust the instincts, don't trust the headlines, you know, dig deeper into some of that stuff. I mean, this morning I'm texting back and forth with a friend who, you know, was reading about the coronavirus and watched some quick documentary from not a credible news source. And, you know, gently I had to be like, I know you want information on this. Anytime you see it be called the Chinese virus or the Wuhan virus, that's racism. You need to, these are flags for you to not like, but people, it's just, there's so much information out there. And she's like, you know, as I was watching it, I was like, this isn't right. I'm like, trust that feeling inside, because if it isn't sitting well with you, it isn't sitting well with millions of Americans, and stuff is being packaged in a way for us right now that feels like it's tricky, you know. So but in here you can't really fake in here. So and
I love what you just said, Erin, because I do think I really do think that in this moment we're kind of being forced to go back to our instincts in some ways, right? And so at the end of the day, we know when things aren't right. You know, I know that there's a whole lot of workshops and trainings around racism. We know what racism is. We know when we see it. We know when we're operating in it. Like, now, whether we're honest enough to own that, you know, sexism. We know when sexism. Like, you know, my point is, we create these frameworks of like these checklists. But at the end of the day, intuitively, if you are in tune to your energy, your spirit in any way, You
Yeah.
know when something just ain't right. And
Right.
so I think, it's something that you kind of raised, which I think is really important. And I really think women have that sense of, and perhaps the men have it too, but I know women, for whatever reason, I think ours is sharper. Have this intuitive, we it's almost like even with our child, not even as a baby, even as you realize, because I have an adult child now, right? I can always tell when something ain't right. I can figure out and be like, oh mom, everything's fine. But there's something intuitively I know that's not right. And I think that
Yeah.
we've literally got to go back to kind of the basis of checking in with ourselves around not what is the party to do, right?
What is
And
the right
let
thing
that
to do?
shape our
Yeah.
politics. Let that shape how we engage. And I
Yeah.
am hoping that if we are not clear in any other moment in time, we severely need the leadership of women. And so I am hoping that every single woman that is watching this conversation right now is considering in some way, one, I want you to consider running for office, right? But if you're not going to run for office, you damn near need to be supporting some woman that's
Yeah.
running for
That's
office,
right. That's
right?
right.
Like, are we not tired of the men yet?
Well, and Glenda Carr just joined. Welcome, Glenda.
Hi,
That's another
Glenda.
fantastic group, of another political home, Higher Heights for America, Black Women's Political Leadership and Ascension. You know, one of the things I think is also a theme that's come out of these last few weeks, you said it earlier, like, we love to have a boogeyman, but this isn't about Trump. Here in New York, it's like, we love to have a savior, but this isn't about Cuomo. Like, stop. The local elected officials, our mayors, our state legislators, we saw that in Wisconsin. These local seats, these municipal level seats who provide the care that government is supposed to provide in our communities, that have control of these budgets about how we're getting resources allocated. Can you talk just a little bit about some of the things you've been seeing on the ground with some local electeds? Yeah.
Absolutely. There's a couple of myths that I love to challenge. That one, there's this myth that what drives the ticket is the top of the ticket. That's not what we found. What drives the ticket is really the bottom of the ticket. What do I mean by that? That when what we have found is in communities, particularly in communities that there's low voter turnout, when people lose control of their school board and their county commission, it's hard
Yes.
to get them interested in supporting the president,
Yeah.
right? The presidential candidate. That's so far removed from people's day-to-day lives, right? But the DA, right, and the school, who's on the school board, that has immediate impact. And so oftentimes I think a big opportunity that we miss is getting caught up in the top races, and not necessarily focus on how literally the bottom races can actually
Right.
drive the top of the ticket.
Right.
We've seen that I have examples that we saw that in 2018 when we actually were we were working in a judgeship. And you all know that of all of the races where you have the lowest turnout, primarily
Yes.
are judges. So part of it is not that people don't care about judges. One, judges aren't necessarily good politicians in a sense, right? But secondly, it's not oftentimes folks don't really know, like,
Right.
who the
What
judge
they,
should
yeah.
select or what they do. They know that they're judged, but they don't really understand. And so what we found is that when you do the political education on the ground, we've seen that we've got the receipts to show it, right? That when you're doing the political engagement on the ground and you're helping to connect the office to
Yes.
people's day-to-day lives, to help people really understand like how that position is connected and how it's connected to their own lives, we always see an uptick in performance. Always. So
Yeah.
I would argue that we got to stop making it that people are apathetic and they don't care. Because I've met very few people that don't care about
Me
getting a
too.
paycheck.
Me too.
I've met
Yep.
very few people that don't care about eating or getting good food or getting access to healthcare, right? And so, that's kind of like a catch-all. That's a cop-out. The truth of the matter is, we've got to do work. We have abdicated our responsibility in a democracy. Somehow we have abdicated our responsibility to these folks that's supposed to be leadership, right? And become very laissez-faire around engaging the process. That is precisely why Trump is in office. And that's precisely why we are where we are. We the people, have to make sure that we protect our interests, not the
Right.
political party's interest, not
Right.
the political candidates, but what is our interest. But I also want to push us on another piece. I often do this, and I would do this all the time at Harvard with my students. My question was, what is your radical reimagining of America? Like,
Yeah.
we got to
Yeah.
start thinking,
Yeah.
not, you know, I hate when folks keep, and I know folks are going to disagree with me on this, but I hate when people keep saying, well, what did the founders intend? I don't give a damn what the founders
I don't
intended.
care.
Let me tell you why I don't care. Because if I was going by what the founders intended, one, I
Right.
would not be on this, I would not have this conversation. The founders didn't even have enough foresight to be able to see me as a leader. The founders didn't even have enough
As a whole
foresight to be able
person.
to see me as a whole person.
Right.
So
Right.
therefore, they're disqualified for
Right.
anything around that. I've got to look back in terms of, I am thinking as I am a founder of a new America. And the people that are listening to this, you need to think of yourself as being founders of the new America. What will that America look like? Right?
Yeah.
What would the healthcare in that country look like? How is it that we're bragging that America is the wealthiest country in the world, right? And you ain't got enough damn tests in the middle of a pandemic? Really? Really?
You don't have enough
You don't have enough
plastic
tests?
face masks?
You don't have enough face masks?
Right.
You got doctors walking around with plastic sheets? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
It is a matter of, not a matter of resources. It's a matter of
Will.
not a priority and will. And the way that we're going to shape the wheel is we can no longer just sit back and think that voting and participating in the election, it leads to power. That's not necessarily the case. That's one component of it. We are responsible for being the founders of a new America if that's what we seek. That means that we've got to create a vision. That means we've got to build networks. That means we've got to organize. That means we got to take down power. Power concedes nothing without a demand. So that means women, do we not see? I was looking at Trump maybe a week ago. The whole stage were white men. I was like, what the hell is going on? Why do we think this is acceptable? Because it's not. But it's not a reflection of how powerful Trump is. It's more a reflection of how untapped power, how much power we are leaving on the table. Because literally, when we decide America's going to be different, America will change.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I mean, I think and this is one of the comments, and sign me up. Okay, Dharma. We want to, so this has come up in the comments, and I want to acknowledge this. I think one of the groups, I think you are a leader of, African-American women have been reimagining a new way, have been negotiating a new way, that many of us need to start to follow. If we aren't following, many of us need to emulate, trying to emulate and be allies in that. I think you did some fantastic work in Alabama, at the Senate level race that was, on your back and the backs of all those women who just hustled and did that organizing. What are you seeing for 2020? Not just in Black women's leadership, but what are the other folks that are sort of doing it right, that are reimagining America in this new way?
So thank you. I do want to talk about, in that I want to talk about kind of short term and long term, right?
Okay.
So short term, the way that I look at elections, I look at harm reduction. That's literally how I look at it. I do not lie to people and tell folks, we gonna get this person in office, it's gonna change the world, because it's not. And y'all know that, right? So that's not what we talk to people around. It's really this idea of self-governance and this idea of getting people in office that literally can help reduce the harm happening to communities, particularly those communities that are most vulnerable. Right. So what can we learn from, I do want to just lift up some lessons learned from the Alabama election that I think are being relevant now. Right. The truth of the matter is right now, and I'm saying this as a political scientist and strategist, not as a supporter of anybody, but the truth of the matter is that where there was energy, a lot of energy in this race, where we literally saw kind of a movement around Democratic candidates, was with the Bernie campaign. Say what you want to, that's just the truth. I can tell you as a person who's been on the ground that I saw more movement in terms of infrastructure on the ground with Bernie Sanders than any other candidate, and I supported Elizabeth Warren. The second thing is Biden was a practical choice and a pragmatic choice for many voters, particularly Black voters. Biden, who's really excited about Biden? Now, maybe some of you. In Alabama, when you saw Black women and Black people vote for Doug Jones, that actually took him over the top, it wasn't because we liked Doug Jones, y'all. We didn't know Doug Jones, right? Matter of fact, he had awful commercials, right? What we organized around was not the candidate. What we organized was around the protection and the interest of the community. And so I think in this election cycle, we're going to have to do the same thing. Those that are supportive and excited about Biden, go ahead, go forth and be great and do that, right? But those of us who are not necessarily excited about the candidate have to really recognize what really is at stake here. This isn't about the Democrats or Republicans. This is literally about we're stopping fascism. I want to let folks know this isn't the regular campaign that we're saying, oh, this is about the Democrats. No, y'all, we're literally we're far past that. We're literally around what are we going to do to stop this man who is literally, not only is he not showing himself fit to serve, and I'm not even, but he's also shown himself aligned with white nationalists. He's also aligned and has no respect, zero respect for women. And he's also aligned and shown himself to really believe in fascism and those tenets of fascism as he runs government, right? And so to run government, I say that because I want us to recognize to not operate like this is some normal stuff, right? This is a critical defining moment around will America go forward or go backwards. What does that mean? Get over your damn self. That if your candidate didn't win, this ain't about the candidate anyway. The fact that we've allowed elections to be about a candidate is problematic in the first place. I don't care if it was Barack Obama. This was never about, for me, this was never about just who is in that position. What it is really about how much power people on the ground are able to have access to and the resources. And so we've got to get focused around what this is about. This isn't about the candidate. So one, get over yourself. Ultimately, and what that means is you've got to be so focused and committed in this election cycle that you've got to stretch yourself in ways that you have not stretched yourself before. That's number one. Number two, get over the fact that your candidate may or may not be the nominee. At this point, if it was, I told my friend last night, it could be a talking mule, and I'm going to vote for it over Trump.
Well, listen, I think one of the things that we're finding, and there's a researcher called Rachel Bidikofer, and what she talks about is hyperpartisanship, that at the highest level right now, we are actually not motivated on either side to vote for something. We're motivated to vote against something. And that is really dangerous, actually, right? Like, we don't want the savior complex, but we also want, for party platforms to be resonant with us, and we don't have that. What we're doing right now, we're practically voting.
It's interesting because I go back and forth from that. On one hand, I do think to stay in that space is extremely dangerous. On the other hand, I can tell you as a Black person from the South that some things need to be damn stopped. And literally, if we don't stop, my point is at the point if when somebody is breaking into my home, my first point of contact is safety. I have to protect my family. We're there, y'all. So while I would love, and I want a candidate, and why I say that's why I'm encouraging us to do kind of this radical reimagining, while I want to really be the supporting the shaping of a new America, at the end of the day, I've got to stop the bleeding. And so on this level, whether it's fear, whether it's love, whether it's joy, whether it's vision, whatever it is that motivates folks to get them to the polls, we don't have the luxury of having the kind of normal election that it's just a matter about agenda. We're in a moment right now that, quite frankly,
I agree.
Democracy is literally being threatened. We can't underestimate that, and we can't not stress that this is beyond about a political agenda. We literally are at a point that we're talking about fascism. The Supreme Court in this country, literally just did a ruling to tell people that an
election date is more important than your health.
They made a ruling while they themselves were isolated. They didn't even get together. So they believed so much that there was a health risk that they were isolated and voted in different locations, but made a ruling that said it was okay for you to vote. Think about that for a minute. I'm raising that because I think we've got to have that kind of analysis to be honest about what is happening. you know, and it's almost like there's a Billie Holiday song that says, God bless those, the child that has his own. And so that's literally what we've got to do. We literally, and I mean this as seriously as I can say it, we literally have to take power. We have got to build and the frame of the America that we want to see, y'all. And I think a couple of questions that I'll just put out to the audience. One, I'm going to ask people right now, kind of close your eyes. Close your eyes for a second, for a couple of seconds. And I'm going to ask you a question. Imagine America without racism and sexism. Now open your eyes. How many of you couldn't see anything? What about you, Erin?
I couldn't see anything for like my generation. I could see something like for my daughter. Right. It feels far away. It feels far away.
It feels far away. And most of the time, it doesn't matter where I go and I do this exercise, 98% of folks in the room can't see anything. And let me say, I'm a freedom fighter and I have a hard time. Oftentimes I can't see. And so, and I raise that. Why is that important? Because how are we going to eliminate sexism and racism, and we can't even envision a country without it? And so what that means is that we've got some work to do, y'all. That means that literally we've got to stop thinking about asking the damn question of what the founders wanted, and literally create this framework and this discussion. What is it that we want? Right? What is the America that we can create? Because just as though there were those that had a vision of, you know, because at the time, let's be honest, at the time, you know, it's interesting because my critique of the founding America, I have a critique of the founding America, but I also, there's parts of the American Revolution that I really admire, right? And so you've had these folks that, you know, decided we ain't paying no more taxes on no damn tea. We done. Right. And literally started creating what they felt
vision,
out of their vision. My point is, I think that that's up to us now, that we got to stop just responding to the politics of the day. We've got to be visionaries, and we've got to fight to get to that vision. And what better opportunity for the women of the world? Y'all, can't we create and imagine something different? Like, that's what we're known to do. And so I think it's really important that we do two things. That one, we deal with the immediate need, that this election cycle, we've got to fight to make sure that we have a mail-in option.
Yes.
Two, we need to be organizing, building up political homes so that folks literally can start getting their information and ideas from each other, not just what they say on Fox News or CNN for that matter, right? And I think the third thing, we've got to really step up. The bottom line, we've got to step up for leadership. Like, so it's good. We can blame the Republicans and we can blame folks around Trump all day long, but guess what? We helped create Trump. Yes.
Well, and I want to reiterate that. So the three things are sort of like fight like hell for mail-in ballots right now, right? Yep. And I think the idea of people like come for you with mail-in ballots, like there's no argument. There's nothing you could say that would change my mind. There's no reason for it. There's 1,000 models. Like, I'm not even going to debate people on it. Like, no, end of story, done. Mail-in ballots, I want it now. Like, that's the kind of attitude we need to have.
Absolutely.
You know, there's like, all day I can give you the facts. You're not interested in the facts, and so I'm not giving you my time, right? I'm going to go number two, go find my political home, people who want to hear about this, who want to help me organize, who want to sign the petition, who want to get informed and talk about it. And then number three, step up to leadership. And I think number one thing that people have been telling us, these first-time candidates who are stepping up, and if you are a first-time candidate, come to Vote, Run, Lead, we will help you, but that they don't have enough of these campaign managers and just folks that can help work on their campaigns at a local level. So, like, take a risk, take a jump, sign up for somebody's campaign to manage it. Even if you don't know what you're doing, there's a lot of resources out there. They need another body. They need another person in the fight with them. And there's other ways to sort of step up to that leadership. And I would say helping first-time candidates is a big one right now.
Absolutely. Matter of fact, my first campaign, I was the chicken box girl. I had one job. that was to pick up the lunches for election day. I was the chicken box girl, right? And I learned a lot in my chicken box delivery.
That's right. That's right. Just listen. Okay, we're a little over time, but I don't want to end. I don't want to end without talking about some of this sort of like this representative leadership, right? So we've heard Biden say things like, I'm going to pick a black woman for the Supreme Court, right? We've heard Biden say, I'm going to pick a woman VP. There's a short list of 11 women right now in the New York Times. Several of them are women of color. This is, let's be clear as to what this is. This is a nod to women and to women of color who we have not seen at the highest levels a crack in any of that, for folks that we can get really excited about. There was another collective mourning, whether you loved her or not, around Elizabeth Warren not able to really ever even break through once 2020 hit.
Right.
Kamala with 20,000 people in the beginning, and now she's on the short list, right? For VP, not for and and Stacey Abrams, who we heard on MSNBC a couple nights ago, say I'd be honored to be his VP. I'm like, he'd be honored to be your VP. Like.
While we
while on one hand I'm thrilled, that I think we're going to see, and Americans are going to see, highly, deeply qualified, diverse women who are now up for the VP position. We have history as to how this goes. It also feels like, we're on the short list for the number 2 slot, and I want to hear your reaction to that. I feel good and bad about it. So,
I'll just say racism and sexism is very American. It's as American as apple pie. And so it's unfortunate that we are in this space, because quite frankly, I loved Elizabeth Warren and still love Elizabeth Warren and still think she would be the best the best president right now. But in light of that, I think that's why it's really important that we don't get caught up. We don't lose sight about what this really is about. And so while I think identity politics is certainly really important, what we're talking about right now is at least power. We're talking about power. Yeah. And so, my great aunt would always say, baby, don't hate small beginnings. I raise that because I absolutely think it is far, far beyond time for a woman to be the president, right? But being the vice president ain't necessarily a bad gig, right? Depending on who you are. I mean, the truth of the matter is the presidential nominee, who ultimately, he's not yet, but the leading Democratic nominee was a vice president. And so I'm raising that where we are. What, as a good organizer, what you always have to think about is being honest and having an honest assessment of where we are at this moment. And being a good organizer, it is how do we literally leverage this moment so that we can literally bust the door down, and so that we change the conversation. And so I think it is going to be critical and key that we have a strong woman VP that literally sets the tone for this whole, the idealism, breaks this whole notion of a woman not being able to serve as president. I think that's really important and key. In the meantime, what that means is women, we're going to have to organize. We're going to have to organize in ways that we've not organized before. And I think women, we're going to have to step up in leadership. This ain't the moment for you to wait and get permission from your husband or any man or even your friends, right? This is the moment that I really believe this. I know this sounds very California woo-woo, like my friend would say, right? But I believe the universe is literally calling for us right now. We are literally desperately need the leadership of women. Yes. That's just the truth. This ain't about I don't like. I
mean, look at it. Look at the maps of Mother Nature, healing herself, right? Yes. As we stay quiet. Look at the caregivers who are holding iPhones up as family members pass away. Those nurses are women who are bringing some humanity to what's happening right now. People who have their eyes open to what is really going on are seeing the business of care, how we have taken care of one another in this country the foundation is empty. And we have to rebuild that.
Yes. Who's keeping these homes together? right now?
Right.
Who is
I don't know
on
how we're
Zoom?
miraculously
I don't know.
homeschooling and on a
Right.
Zoom
That's what
call.
I'm like,
Whoever that woman is, she needs to run for office.
like, who is on Zoom for 50 calls a day? If you are like do a shout out. If you are on Zoom for 50 calls a day, you are feeding or taking care of somebody in your family. You're keeping your child or your children from choking each other and also entertaining them, right? And you're at least trying to give some love to your partner, right?
Yeah.
And keep your family from losing its mind. Listen.
Yeah.
Women are doing that work, right?
Yeah. Like,
And
do government. Don't worry. We can do government. Check.
right.
You got it.
And
You
put on
have
some
it.
cute lipstick before you do your Zoom call. That
Went a
is
little
what
heavy on the blush.
that's why we
No, but
need women.
I think that reality is exactly right. And like, those are the instincts we have to trust. That's the transferable stuff. Like, that is actually what is desperately needed right now. And as we organize power, as we make decisions about our budgets, like, that kind of lens is what is going to help restore and reimagine. And, you know, it's without it, we're just going to be like in the same cycle over and over again where, you know, we're sort of fighting against one another. I mean, harkening back to the beginning of this conversation about your friend who didn't believe the sort of, healthcare for all, like, these are just universal. Like,
Absolutely.
it's just universal. And I really do believe that women have a different way of sort of seeing all of us in a more universal light, because like when those people who don't make it and get, through the cracks, it is women who have to pick up the folks who've gone through the cracks.
Without question.
Like, we see that stuff in our homes, in our families, in our jobs, in our pay, in all of it. So, like, we know that a universal foundation to hold all of us up that's our labor right now. And so if we can get that into a place where it is actually shared and it is valued, and it is written into our laws and it is written into our systems, then that's the kind of, like, then you'll even see a further unleashing of women's talent, right? So
absolutely. And there are a couple of things just quickly I'll just share about that. One, I think I want women to also, let's not become men. Let's not think because our anatomy is different that makes us necessarily righteous in some ways, right? That your gender doesn't make you righteous. It is your righteousness that makes you righteous. And my point is that it's really important that oftentimes, and I've seen women follow into this very patriarchal model that in some way, me being in a position and taking a position of being tough and hard, like that, in some ways that makes me more apt to lead. No, what that means is that you're adapting the values and the behavior of your male counterparts. And that in itself, the fact that you got breasts and it does not necessarily make you any more apt to save people than
right. If you're going to turn and deny sort of a collective experience of women, like, you can't, right? It has to be both. It has to be both, right?
It has to be both. It has to be rooted in, like, the core of really what does distinguish us. The fact that it is something, I think it is something around the way that we're wired to our nurture. There's a nature around nurturing. There's a nature. We have a particular kind of freedom to tap into our emotions in ways that some have used, that men have used as like the negative. I actually think that's the thing that gives us our power. I actually think it's our ability to tap into our emotions and to feel empathy, our ability to be able to hold two things, our ability to be able to nurture and put others in front of ourselves. That is what makes us a really, really good leader. And I think it makes us in many circumstances better leaders than our male counterparts. And so that means that's the stuff we got to lean into. Oftentimes what I see women do is do the reverse. Like, now I've got to take on this persona of this male leadership of being tough and hard and XYZ. And when in the fact of the matter is, that's the very, like, I don't need a woman.
I really see this happening. I mean, the thing I'm really hopeful about is I see this happening. Like, folks like Lauren Underwood, like even Brenda Lopez in Georgia, I'm getting her emails, and like each week they have more heart in them, some of the women that right now are doing such fantastic correspondence around, that is, I actually think this is starting to happen, and we have to really fuel that. Like, that's the candidate you need to go work for. That's the candidate. And what I'm enjoying seeing, and this is a little bit of personal, like when I was, reading all those baby books, right? And it's like, whatever happens when like the baby plays with you, like, it actually happens for men too, right? Like, they test it, it happens but they just, like, they squash it. they squash it every time. Like, they squash the tears, they die of
It's a
heart attacks,
socialization.
they
It's
like
how we
live in,
socialize.
right?
Yeah.
So part of also what I think we're doing by bringing that to the forefront, by saying that is as valuable as the technical and decision-making skills, like we don't lose that, right?
That's right.
But it allows men to also have a more empathetic
Absolutely.
way of seeing, right? I mean, one of the
Absolutely.
things, you know, Faith Winter out in Colorado, when people ask her like, oh, how do you build a tough skin for politics? She's like, I just started saying like, you know, screw the tough skin. I need to feel what voters are feeling. Otherwise, how do I know? Like,
Right.
you know, I can read all the books, I can do all the statistics, but if I also need to know like here and here, you know, and I think that
Absolutely.
that's what we're like, that's the run as you are behind Vote Red
Absolutely.
Lead. And that's, to me, like, that's why I'm like, I don't care what party you are a part of. This is not for me about, you know, holding the way things are for the future. This is, again, like when you said reimagine democracy, like that's what we put in this week's email. Like, it wasn't even, it's like, just think, we gotta figure this out.
Absolutely.
And we got to do it. We're the ones to do it.
Absolutely. We're the ones we're waiting for. And so thank you for that, because I absolutely agree with you. You know, I think that the leadership of women, the other thing that's really interesting around the leadership of women is that we're inclusive. That leadership of women for me doesn't mean at the exclusion of men. I like the men folk. Right. And so I think it really is a matter of that when you are not utilizing all the human potential that exists, then it's problematic. And so when you've got the majority of the population being marginalized based on gender, like you are leaving out a tremendous amount of power on the table and possibilities and potential. And so we've got to see it as such. That to me, like I don't like to get into the, you know, the men versus women, the XYZ, right. But the truth of the matter is there is literally a gap of leadership, right, that has been driven by both racism and sexism in this country, that literally we're not tapping into the creative, innovative, amazing leadership power of women. And if that is going to change, I am convinced it's going to have to be the people who are most impacted. We're going to have to change, right, which is what you're doing with Vote Run Lead and what we are doing at Black Voters Matter. And so I just hope people, you know, in the midst of this crisis, let me say this, that I'm always, I'm one of those glass half full people. You know, I have my glass half empty moments. Like the other day I was asleep. This is so crazy, Erin.
And then you bought a disco ball.
Oh my, I bought a disco ball. Do I need a disco ball? I bought me a disco ball. Y'all, on Amazon for $13.99, and it has changed my life. So buy you a disco ball. But what's interesting is the other day, a couple of weeks ago, I woke up and I was literally going down a rabbit hole, and I was starting to feel so much anxiety. It's around 3 o'clock in the morning. I was trying to remember when you're doing yoga. I was like, do you say or do you say I literally liked the sound and I couldn't remember it, and it was freaking me out, and I was literally spiraling. And then I had to like kind of get myself back anchored. And so that moment, what I decided is, I am not going to be driven by fear. Having fear in a moment of uncertainty is a natural human experience. Yes. And I'm going to honor that I have that. Yep. But I'm not going to be driven by that. And so what does that mean? How do I get out of that? And so for me, you know, the tool that I use, and I don't know if it helps other, is that I had to ask the question for me was, what is this moment? What is life telling me in this moment? What is this moment teaching me? What is this virus? The presence of this virus, what is it teaching me? And there are a couple of things that even for me personally, and then I just think collectively, you know, personally, I realized how I have also allowed myself to be shaped by the values of capitalist America, which means that right now we're literally in the homes with our families and we feel burdened. Like, really? Like, to be with your own child is now like we've so conditioned that the value is in going to work, but to have our child in our home, right, during this moment, we feel burdened by it. Stop saying that, y'all. Like, it's a lot. I'm not saying it's not. It is a lot, and it's an adjustment, but it's such a blessing. It is such a blessing if we make it to be so, right? And that we recognize that in this moment, more than your employer, your family needs you. Our
Yeah.
children are scared just like we are. And so I think it's really like this flip-flop of values that one, like we're being forced right now to sit still. We're being forced to be reflective. We are being forced to slow down. So instead of buck up against that, we should literally lean into it and lean
Yeah.
into it and ask ourselves,
Or lean back from it. Like, relax. Like,
about myself. What is
yes.
this moment teaching me about my community? What is this moment teaching me about politics? You know, now, you know, we've been having this healthcare debate for a number of years now, right? And we've got 32 million Americans who do not have healthcare insurance. And so let me ask the question now, right? The question now is, do you want your neighbor to be healthy? You probably do. We all want our neighbors to be healthy, because what we recognize now is that the health of my neighbor and the health of other people actually impacts my own health, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
so I am hoping that in this moment, this whole conversation around who deserves health care and who deserves to be healthy, like that's shifted, that we actually recognize how interdependent we are, right? I'm also hoping that in this moment that we're recognizing, when we're talking about the economy, it's so interesting because the folks who, you know, we want to force, that there are some that want to force back to work, are the people who are paid the less, who are the people who are the least, right?
With the most insecurity, right?
And the most insecurity, right? Yet they're the folks that we're dependent on. Like, you should have a whole different appreciation for a janitor and people who are cleaning public facilities right now. You know, should have a whole nother value for people who are taking care of our food and people who are working at Amazon in the warehouses right now, and people who are literally preparing our food and our groceries and bringing those things. We should have a whole different appreciation for them. And so I'm hoping that even in this moment, that we're really re-looking at how we value people who contribute and work in our environment. If you work, you should be able to live. The idea that you work and you got to live in a car is unacceptable. My point is, you know, I am hoping that the gift in this moment is reminding us that we really have gotten away from the values of advancing and protecting humanity. And what will it take? This new radical reimagined America. What is it that we want to see that literally will pull out the best of who we are? That's the world I want to live in.
Me too.
And I believe it's possible.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. It doesn't feel as far away right now as when I had just opened my eyes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, it's possible. Listen, I tell people all the time, I sit here as a person that my great grandmother was bought and sold like a piece of property 30 minutes from the house in which I grew up, right? Like I can tell you about stories of when people resist, and that like literally it is and stories around how it's important for us to believe even when others around us don't have the vision. The world has always been changed by those of us who had the audacity to believe and the courage to do that work and to bring that vision into being. The world has always, it hadn't been millions and millions. I always tell folks, my aunt would say that in Selma, where I grew up, that if everybody was on the bridge that day that claimed that they were on that bridge, the bridge would have collapsed. Like, you know, but in hindsight, there are folks now that's like, oh, I wish I was a part of it. I think the same thing will happen now. Those of us that literally from our heart and our spirit and our soul, we love humanity, and we have the audacity to believe that we can create a better world, right? We have to be relentless in our work and our showing up, and we've got to continue to show up, and things will change. Mighty rivers are filled drop by drop. So don't hate small beginnings. We literally,
that's right. I write that down. Don't hate small beginnings.
No, that's how we make change.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I know I'm taking up a lot of your time. We're at 11 o'clock, and I know you have a full day and I have a full day, and this is like, now my day is even fuller. I don't need the rest of my day. I'm good. And I think so are the folks. that have joined. I know folks are sort of sharing how inspired they are, you know, reimagining America, radically reimagining America. Like it's the right reminder for me personally. I appreciate that, and it's just it's the right tone, LaTosha. You always somehow just have like this. I don't know if it's like some rod like right down the center of you. It just like always is just resonating like love and hope and just smarts. Like, can I say that? Can you, you know, always.
I'll take
So,
smarts, but I do
you know,
think,
like it helps my head, it helps my heart, and yeah, I'm so appreciative. Thank you so
I want
much.
to lift you up, Erin. I do want to say you are like one of the hardest working women I know. We got years working together. Years ago, we worked together with White Women White House Project. I really do. I'm so proud of you and your leadership.
Thank you.
As a young woman, you are whole, like just busting down the doors. And I think that I think it's really important for us to lift up women who are in positions of leadership, because it's not easy. And so I want to send you love, and I hope that the women that are watching this recognize how special you are to create this space and this leadership. So thank you. I appreciate you.
All right. Love you. See you
Love
soon,
you too.
hopefully.
Bye, y'all. Right. And love never fails. Bye. Love will win. We gonna win, y'all. We work together. We gonna win.
Join us on Saturday. We have amazing experts at 11 o'clock. I have to say this. Sorry. Join us on Saturday, 11 o'clock. Amber Reynolds from Vote at Home. Joe Costa-Zamarripa, who's a state legislator in Wisconsin, who's going to give us what happened on the ground and hopefully talk about a recall. And Keisha Gaskins from Rockefeller Brothers, who is just an expert on everything when it comes to voting and democracy, former head of the League of Women Voters, Brennan Center, just a genius. So join us, 11 o'clock. Check it out on our website. It's all over our social media. Thank you again, LaTosha Brown. Thank you, Black Voters Matter, for all the hard work you all do. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you again next Thursday.